Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
And thanks for having me back, Jim.
Ross, a reader emailed us asking, could Prime Minister Trudeau's G7 debacle cause Canadian real estate to accelerate to the downside? What do you think could happen as a result of the Prime Minister's comments? Well, Ross, what do you think?
Well, I guess, it's when we talk about a timely interview, I guess today it's which we're watching even on the television happen today. It's you couldn't get any more timely with it than this question. To be quite honest with you, what is going to happen and what is happening in the real estate market is not going to be impacted by any political decision, tax policy, housing policy, affordability policy, mortgage loan policy. None of those items are going to impact the correcting housing market as it's correcting now. There may be some logical outcome with your question about accelerating the downside, but that would only be if Canadians believe that our trade situation with the United States is going to be damaged by the words of our Prime Minister. I think all the listeners should understand, regardless of your political leanings, in this country, we should all be hoping that our Prime Minister and his trade delegation, in their negotiations, find a way to work around the way that President Trump negotiates. I understand that unskilled, inexperienced people negotiating these deals have maybe negotiated one or two deals in their entire lifetime, and they're negotiating against someone who's negotiated thousands of deals, and that puts Canada at a disadvantage. What I think all of our listeners need to understand, though, is that we have a rare opportunity in this country in these negotiations because the American press is so anti their president that they are willing, they are actively willing to harm their nation if they feel it could stop Trump from being reelected. And I doubt that has ever happened in the history of the United States before, and I pray that a situation like that never ever happens in our country. I hope that no matter what our opinions are about anyone's politics that is in the Prime Minister's seat, we all get behind them and we hope the best. Because I'll tell you, Jim, when a family loses the family home because of an economic recession, all Canada pays a price, but the family that loses their home can pay a severe price. What we're looking at here in terms of accelerating the downside of this market that we're in right now, no, those words are not going to accelerate the downside. What they could do, though, is if they're not able to extract themselves from this negotiation in a positive manner, in other words, they're not able to come out with some bilateral deal with the United States, because we're not probably going to see a trilateral deal. Trump has never wanted that. It's been quite clear in his negotiation strategy. I also think our listeners should understand that, contrary to popular belief, I believe you could probably insult Trump in public, and you can turn around and be his buddy a week later. And I think our Prime Minister has an option here to clear up the problem that was created this weekend. I look at everything, Jim, in terms of how you negotiate on a home sale, because I believe that's how Trump views his negotiation strategy as a real estate deal. Your high-powered, your large volume listing realtors, they will go out and they will meet an inexperienced realtor who wants to put an offer on their listing. That inexperienced realtor basically will do whatever they need to do to get that experienced realtor to help them out with the deal. Once the deal is successful, arrogance comes into play. And you'll walk into your real estate office, and that you'll hear the realtor that possibly you helped out get their first deal together, making comments back at the office to make themselves appear as if they were the heroes in the negotiation strategy, instead of accepting that during the negotiations they looked for help from the experienced realtor who's handled hundreds of thousands of negotiations. That's exactly what I see rolling out here. And the experienced realtor, the one who's did hundreds of thousands of negotiations, they don't forget during the next negotiation what was said behind their back about them at the meeting. And that's really where Trudeau's problems are going to be going forward. He has wasted some trust that he had. He had the ability to look like, I'm not saying this in truth, the little brother of Trudeau, or of Trump. Trump taking him under his wings to help work this deal out, but instead he wanted to pretend that he's his equal in terms of negotiating. And that's just simply not the truth. Regardless of your political leanings, regardless of what you think of one person or another, their personal character traits, we're talking strictly negotiation here. So I don't think it's going to accelerate the downside, Jim. I don't think it's going to accelerate. That is already written in stone. What you are seeing now come out in real estate stats, as I've said in the show before, we read these numbers a year in advance. You're only starting to see them come out into the market now. A real estate market cannot flip overnight. It is an impossibility. Obviously, when houses have to be sold to allow another home to be sold, a market can't flip overnight. So everything you're seeing now has been in place for over a year, and it will continue to roll out. Let's not put any blame on our Prime Minister. He felt what he needed to say, and he said it in public. Right or wrong, it's not relevant to us as Canadians. As Canadians, all we want to hear is that there's a deal with the United States. Whatever deal they're able to negotiate, let's hope it's a good one for Canada. But we don't need to be playing these games worrying about personalities or character traits. This is strictly for us as a nation. Let's get this deal done. Let's get it signed. The best deal that we can get. We're not going to get what we want. There is compromise that's going to be needed. It's not going to be like the way that it was before. That is not going to happen. But the housing market, Jim, it'll be exactly as it was before this meeting was ever held.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after the break.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, some folks are suggesting rising listing counts are taking place coast to coast. Do you see that happening?
Rising listing counts. Okay, so this is, again, people look at real estate stats, or they go to realtor.ca, they get their pencil and paper out, and they write some numbers down. These numbers are irrelevant numbers, Jim, as I have said on your show over and over again. Which is why you get this false narrative about rising listing rates. Your listeners will be shocked to understand there were actually more houses listed for sale at this time last year than there are today. You are not going to read that in a real estate stat. You're going to not read that in pundits or housing analysts or so-called experts because they don't know how to measure listing counts. In other words, do they know that a single listing is counted 4 times in these totals? No, of course they don't know that. Do they know what is a for sale by owner, what is a regular listing? No, they don't know that. Do they know how the real estate boards intermingle their stats? No, they don't know that. So even on face count, had they taken a measurement at the middle of June in 2017, they'd see there were more listings in the middle of June of 2017 than there are today. That is on a straight number. When you then break down the listings to see what is actually available, the numbers are less this year than last year. The listings have not risen. The seasonality that real estate agents use there is no such thing as seasonality in listings. I know the primary listing month in the province of Ontario, someone said to me, should you list? I tell you to list your home in February. You're not going to see that anywhere else in writing, but I know that the way that the MLS system operates, that's when you should be listing your home. You shouldn't be listing it in April when all the realtors tell you that's the best time to list it. There is no data that supports the April listing period. I also know that come into June, families are getting ready for holidays, so they don't list their property. So you have to make an adjustment for what type of properties are coming onto the market. What condition are those properties that are coming into the market? What kind of a delay between listing date and selling date is actually happening, not the one you read in the real estate newsletters. Because what we can ascertain from that is how much activity there will be going forward, which is when we tell you here on the show, we're measuring the market today so we can forecast 4 and 8 months from now. That's because we read things like listings the way that the listings tell us they need to be read. If a listing is coming on at an attractive price, the property is in good condition, and competing properties for that listing are low, then the odds are that the owner of that home will end up being the buyer of another home in the next 30 to 60 days. That is the multiplicity of sales. If you're not watching the multiplicity of sales, you have come up with crazy comments like listings are rising when they're not. It's why listings to new sales ratio does not determine a balanced buyer or seller's market. And as we said in your show probably a dozen times, it's why CMHC has no supporting documentation to prove new listings to sales ratio works, because it doesn't work. It's a coincident measurement of the market. It's measuring a latent sales rate against a forward producing listing rate. And they're trying to say whether or not those two work. You're using two totally different metrics to come up with the new sales to listings ratio. That's how you get these comments about Toronto slowly deflating. Look, Toronto's in a free fall, people. It is in a massive free fall. What angers me, and I will use the term angers, is the 80,000 families who purchased homes from the real estate board of Toronto Real Estate Board's sales reps in the last year, who were led to believe that the market was slowly deflating when it's falling. What home buyer, Jim, in their right mind would purchase a home today if they were told the truth it's going to be worth less 3 months from now when they close on it? Nobody would buy that house. They would say, we'll hold off then for 3 months and we'll look at what the prices are 3 months from now. The only asset in the world which is being sold as a good investment as it's dropping in value is residential real estate. That's because the home buyers are not being represented anywhere in Canada, contrary to every single thing you'll read in the news, or in the provincial regulators, or in real estate textbooks. Home buyers do not have proper representation. I'll explain it to you this way. Your comment, Jim, about why are Burlington home prices not falling when the rest of the GTA is a myth, because of the way that the real estate board puts out their sales materials. This person, whoever you're commenting about, has heard something about Burlington that they believe indicated prices were not falling. At the same time, there are homes in Burlington, Ontario, my hometown, that right now, the exact same home would sell for 35% less than what it sold for in April of 2017. That is a 35% house price correction on that specific type of home. Housing prices are falling all over. Your listeners need to understand, you always need to compare apples to apples instead of apples to apples that have worms and are rotting. You need to compare a bright, shiny apple, grade A, against a bright, shiny, grade A apple. You can't be comparing a bright, shiny apple, grade A, against one that has worms and bruises all over it. It's what's called the quality. Home buyers are not stupid. If there are 10 homes listed for sale at $100,000 and 5 of them sell, the person who purchased the 5th home, 5th of the 5, got the worst end of the deal. He got the worst house. He got the leftovers. Then there were 5 other homes that were so bad they couldn't even sell. Well, maybe next month those worse houses will sell. In a housing market where there's 10 homes and only 1 house sells, that means the home buyer got the best home available when they purchased. The second, third, and fourth, and fifth, or second, third, fourth, and fifth, which happened when 5 out of 10 homes, those problems don't exist because the only one that sold was the best house, not the 5th best house. You need to be measuring the quality of home that you're buying. Now, normally, the only way to accomplish that is with an appraiser walking with you as you tour these properties. After a building inspector a home inspector has assessed the home, turned the home inspection report over to the appraiser goes back and spends 2 or 3 hours doing their report, and then they give you an opinion of value of that property. It's my personal belief that every single home in Canada should be purchased that way. That's not what realtors want. Those 80,000 families who purchased with a Toronto Real Estate Board member, that is not the service that they got. They had a real estate agent tell them, well, I showed you 10 houses, 2 sold, this is the 3rd best. Yeah, they're asking the same price as the first 2 were, but since the first 2 are gone, this is the only one you get to buy. So yeah, the asking price is the right price. People overpay. They overpay in a falling market. They carry that overpayment for the next 25 years in their mortgage debts. In a house price correction, it's which causes properties to be underwater. It causes properties that where the person who purchased it cannot sell the property and recoup their costs. They're underwater. That's why when you're hearing all these different stories, people don't understand what's going on. Now, of course, Vancouver, you just had that little $37,000 boost that was created with first-time buyers, and your market is still getting that out. But you're going to start to see that be removed from your sales stats with June sales when they come in.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario, with grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program to test numerous targets located by recent groundwork is planned for early 2018. Please visit our website at rmroyalty.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, the Ontario Superior Court ruled a home seller who claimed not to have known the home they were selling was a former grow-op was not liable to statements made to the buyers of their home. Does this mean we're returning to a buyer beware world of home buying in Canada?
Great topic, Jim. And all of your listeners who are looking at the housing market and they're hearing all the stories from academics, economists, housing experts, writers, bloggers, everybody who thinks they're an expert at housing. This is an example of how all of that BS that you're told can get debunked. Here we have with the Ontario Superior Court, they overturned a ruling in the lower court that said that the seller was responsible for what they should have known when they filled out a property report. So in Ontario, you have sellers sign a property report. If there's any problems with your property, the seller is legally required to disclose it. When I started selling real estate in the 80s and early 90s, Jim, every single transaction in Canada was under a buyer beware caveat emptor premise. Okay? So up until about 1995, your listeners need to understand this because this goes back to the real estate stats. It goes about how the real estate industry treats you. It goes back how the real estate brokerage industry works. It goes back to how the real estate boards work. Everything up until about 1995 was caveat emptor. In other words, the home buyer was responsible on their own, without their realtor, without the homeowner, without the listing agent, the buying agent. None of those people were responsible except for the home buyer themselves. The home buyer was solely responsible to investigate a home before they purchased it. Then they brought in buyer agency. Well, they didn't really bring in buyer agency. They brought in a limited version of buyer agency that would allow real estate brokerages in Canada to still double dip commissions. And in every single province in Ontario, they can still double dip at will and fool the public. This court case proves that point. What you have here is you had a buyer purchase a home relying upon the statement of an owner that the home had never been a grow-op, that marijuana had never been grown in the property. The seller said, to the best of our knowledge, it hasn't been used as a grow-op while we've owned the house, and to the best of our knowledge, it wasn't used as a grow-op prior to our purchasing it. Turned out to be the house had been used as a grow-op. The problem is that the buyer's agent did not represent the buyer properly. There is no logical reason in Canada today, Jim, that any home buyer is purchasing a property without doing all of the due diligence on their own. They need to shift the onus of that responsibility onto their real estate agent. A qualified buyer broker will assume that responsibility with a huge degree of due diligence for their clients. They have no problem finding out whether or not the house was a grow-up previously. It is a very simple process to find out if a house had a leaky basement, if it was used as a grow-up, if there was a murder in the house, if there are ghosts in the house, whether or not the roof was replaced 7 years, whether or not the windows were replaced 8 years ago, whether or not there was mold in the house. All of these things are so easily discovered today, Jim, in 2018, that there is no reason for a home buyer not to fully embrace caveat emptor. Buyer beware. I am going to purchase this house the exact same way I would purchase a used car. I'm going to take it to my mechanic to get it checked out before I buy it. I'm going to check to see if that odometer has been rolled back and someone's lying to me about the number of miles on the car. I am going to find out if it was a little old lady from Newmarket or Richmond that owned this house, or it was a 17-year-old teenager from the local high school. I am going to find those questions out before I spend my money. Your house is the exact same thing, only thing multiples more expensive. There is no reason. Our buyer programs specifically are designed to prevent this type of nonsense from happening, that the Ontario Superior Court has now said, once again, we're all the way back to 1995 again. I don't care about the little bit of a leeway the court decision gave, and maybe the little bit of responsibility that the court left. The point of the matter is, don't believe anybody. Your listeners should not believe anyone, including me. If you're going to spend $500,000 or more, please don't believe me. Ask to see in writing what people are telling you. Then go to your lawyer and ask your lawyer if what they're saying is true. Then go to your accountant and ask your accountant if what they are saying is true. Then go to your home inspector and get a signed document from the home inspector that there is a degree of liability on the home inspector if for what they say, if it's true. The same with your mortgage broker. The same with your realtor. The same with your appraiser. It's 2018. There is no need in today's connected world that all of these answers are not available. It's no different than people believing housing prices released by a real estate board. If people want to believe those lies, it's because they choose to believe those lies. They can't blame it on the real estate board, in all fairness, Jim, because the real estate board tells you in their footnotes, don't believe us. You just refuse to read the footnotes. You want to believe housing prices are going to go up forever. We are not going to have a house price correction. You are going to believe housing prices are slowly deflating in Toronto instead of collapsing. You are going to believe condominium prices in Vancouver rose, and it had nothing to do with the $37,000 boost in what first-time buyers were going to be able to pay as it worked its way up through the sales chain. You're going to believe housing prices in Burlington have risen when they're falling. The exact same thing that the Ontario Superior Court has just warned everybody about in Canada today. Go back to caveat emptor. Go back to buyer beware. Don't just trust what someone says. Do your due diligence. It's so easy to do in 2018. There is no excuse that it's not done. There's no way possible that the buyers of this former grow-op did not have the ability within 2 or 3 minutes with 2 or 3 minutes of work to find out that this house was a former grow-op. There is no reason. The only people who stop you from knowing are realtors. Realtors have fought this now for over 20 years because they don't want to assume the responsibility, because they want to make their commission as easily as possible. Find a buyer's rep, an exclusive buyer broker who does not do seller representation under any circumstances. One who refuses to list a property and work for sellers. That's the only way that you can get around these instances where the Ontario courts come in, overturning rulings of younger courts about whether or not your home was a former grow-op.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. You're listening to HoweStreet.com Radio. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at HoweStreet. If you have any questions for Ross or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@HoweStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HoweStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HoweStreet.com Radio is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.